Hi, I'm Matt, and on today's Matt's World DIY, I'm making one of my favorite recipes ever. It's cranberry upside down cake. It is the most perfect thing that you can bring to your next holiday gathering. It is a combination of tart and sweet and delicious. It is just amazing. So let's get down to it. The very first thing you're going to have to do is get your oven set to 350 degrees. While my oven is preheating, I'm going to get my 9-inch squared baking dish prepared. I've already cut a perfect square of parchment paper to fit into the bottom of my pan, and I'm just going to spray it with some baking spray. And I mostly want to get the sides coated. The bottom is simply to hold the parchment paper down. With my baking dish prepared, let us take a 1/4 cup of butter and heat that in the microwave. I'm going to melt that down, and you could do this on the stove top and then you can do the next step in a saucepan, but I just prefer to do this in the microwave. After my butter has been melted in the microwave, I'm going to take a 1/2 cup of brown sugar. I'm also going to add a tablespoon of rum. I don't have rum on hand, so I'm just going to use a tablespoon of vanilla. After those ingredients are in a bowl, I'm just going to whisk them together to blend them, and then I'm going to pour them into my baking dish. To a medium-sized bowl, I'm going to add 1 1/3 cup of cranberries. Now I have these beautiful fresh cranberries that I have washed and dried. I've sorted through them to make sure that any bad little bits have been taken out. So I'm going to put these cranberries in a bowl, and I'm going to chop up 2/3 cup of toasted walnuts. So if you don't have walnuts, you can also use pecans. Pecans are another alternative to this. I've had this recipe with both walnuts and pecans, and honestly, either way is good. I actually prefer the pecans, but the walnuts are fine. When you're chopping them up, don't chop them too fine. You want to be able to actually have some of the texture retained in the nuts that you're using in your dish. Another thing is, I have made this without using nuts at all. I just had the cranberries with the sugar and the butter, and while it was good, it really was missing something. So having that extra texture really helps enhance the dish. Okay, so I'm going to put the walnuts that I've chopped up in the bowl with my cranberries. I'm just going to put them all in there, and then we're going to start moving on to our dry ingredients. In a large bowl, we're going to assemble our dry ingredients. We're going to start with 1 1/2 cups or 200 grams of all-purpose flour. I'm putting my flour, as you might know I like to do this, I put it in a sifter so that I can knock out any of the bumps and lumps that might be in it. To my flour, I'm going to add 1 1/2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. I love cinnamon. And to help offset the sweetness of this dish, 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm using iodized salt, so that is a little bit saltier than if you were using kosher salt, so I'm going to add just a little bit less. We're going to sift these ingredients together. I no longer need my scale, so I'm finished with that. Here we go, sift away. This is like one little step that takes such a little bit of time, but helps you in the long run. In another bowl, we're going to assemble our wet ingredients. So I put the dry aside, get in a larger bowl. To this bowl, I'm going to add 1 cup or 200 grams of granulated sugar. Also, 1 cup of pumpkin. I have a spoon here. Just a minute. 1 cup of pumpkin. 1/3 cup of vegetable oil, and 2 eggs. With a hand mixer, I guess you could use a stand mixer as well. I don't have one. I'm going to mix together my pumpkin, the oil, the sugar, and the eggs until it's smooth. Now that my wet ingredients have all been combined, I'm just going to get the edges here. I'm going to add my dry ingredients to the mix. Before I do that, I'm just going to whisk it up just to make sure everything is well incorporated and blended together. And then I'm just going to plop it into my dry ingredients and then mix this until combined. You don't want to stir it too much to activate the gluten, and if you do that, you know that you're going to end up having a kind of a tougher dough, a tougher product in the end. You don't really want that. This is going to be somewhat thick, so don't be overly concerned that you don't have enough moisture in your batter. You do. It's going to be just fine. This looks beautiful. Very, very nice consistency here. Okay, since that is combined, I'm going to take my prepared pan with my butter and the brown sugar, and I'm going to add my nuts and the cranberries. You want to make sure when you're baking this, put it on a lined baking sheet, because it will probably boil over, and you don't want syrup in the bottom of your oven. Unless, of course, you want syrup in the bottom of your oven. That's fine. Now that I have the baking dish prepared, I'm going to incorporate now the wet ingredients into my dish. And I'll tell you once again, this recipe, I've been making this for years. Over 10 years ago, a friend of mine served this up at a Thanksgiving dinner, and it was like, what is this heaven that I'm eating? It was like, I was so in love with this cake, and she kind of she kind of took a mental note of that, and every year after that she made this for me, and it's just absolutely delicious, and it's actually very good also in the morning the next morning with a cup of coffee. Just perfect. Now that my batter is in my baking dish, I have a lined cookie sheet that I'm going to place this on in case the cranberries get a little wild and crazy up in there. I don't want the syrup and stuff that's going to boil over to go into the bottom of my oven. I've only had that done one time, and that was enough for me to learn my lesson. So this is going to go into a 350-degree oven for 35 to 45 minutes, or until a skewer is inserted in the middle and comes out clean. While my cake is in the oven, I'm going to make a glaze for it. Now, usually you would serve this cake with nice homemade whipped cream, but I think I want to try a little something different today, and I'm going to make a little drizzle that goes over the top of it. And I'm starting with 2 cups of powdered sugar. To that, I'm going to add about a teaspoon of vanilla, maybe a little more. And I'm also going to add about 2 tablespoons, I'm going to start with 1 tablespoon of cream. So here we go, here's the cream. I'm going to start incorporating that. So I'm going to use my little whisk here, get started. It's going to look like there's no way on earth this is going to come together. But trust me, if you're just persistent, it will. That was a lot of vanilla that I put in there. That's why the little glaze is coming out less white, more tan. It's going to be delicious regardless. So we ended up putting a little bit more cream in, probably about close to 3 tablespoons of cream. But now it has this, it's rather thick, but it will loosen up as you work it. There we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in a little bag, and I'm going to pipe it onto the top of the cake whenever I flip it over. So my cranberry upside down cake has been cooling for about 10-15 minutes. And I just went around the edge of the pan to make sure that there was separation of the cake from the sides of the pan before I turn it out. So I'm going to take my plate, place it on top of the pan, and it is barely big enough, so I'm kind of concerned. And I'm going to do a flip over, Oh, man, I hope there's not juice everywhere, but we'll see. There we go. Move that aside. And here it is. Wham. Oh, wow. That is beautiful. And it came straight out of the pan. I did not have to pull the parchment paper off of it. That is beautiful. Look how nice. I'm going to let this cool for just a few minutes before I take my glaze and put on it, because if I put it on there now, it's probably just going to melt all over the place. My cake has had time to cool off, and I have my icing in my baggie, and I just snipped the edge of the corner of the bag so that I'll be able to pipe a little zigzag across the surface of the cake. So let's see how this goes. I don't know why, but okay. All right, okay, here we go. Let's just do this like this. This is a kind of like a double drizzle. I don't know why it's doing that, but that's fine. Ooh, looks nice. I actually kind of like the two lines going at the same time. I did not intend for that to happen, but it is fine with me. That looks wonderful. I think that's going to be so delicious. This is phenomenal. That's why it's one of the top on the list of my favorite desserts. This is great for the holidays. It's wonderful. It's got this tartness to the cranberries. It's got the earthiness of the nuts. It's got the wholesomeness of the pumpkin. It is such a delicious treat. I hope you get a chance to make it. And please, if you like the videos that I'm creating, give me a like and a subscribe. Also, check out some of the other bakes that I have on my baking playlist. See you soon.